If you've had a puppy in the last 10 or so years, you're probably familiar with the practice of traditional socialization. Traditional socialization is a process that aims to build a dog's social skills with others, dogs and humans especially, in order to reduce the likelihood of developing some sort of behavioural problem later on in life, which makes sense. Puppies go through a critical period of socialization that lasts until they're about 4 months old. During that time, they are highly receptive to new experiences, to forming bonds and to improving their social repertoire. But after that age, they tend to respond to new things, including social interactions, with fear and caution. Because fear is generally considered to be the leading cause of serious behavioural issues, it is obviously something we want to avoid by packing in a ton of social experiences early on so that nothing they ever experience after 4 months of age is technically new. However, traditional socialization practices may be causing more harm than it prevents. This graph illustrates our dog's emotional values to stimuli. At either extreme is minus and plus 10, both of which are coloured red for reasons that we'll go into in a minute. And at the centre is an emotional value of 0, which is completely neutral and green. The aim of traditional socialization is to create such a positive emotional response with others that fear simply cannot eventuate. The problem with it, though, is that it fails to take into account the genetics of the individual dog and how that emotional association may impact their ability to make choices. If, for example, I had a stereotypical social lab, they are born social, already thinking everyone is their friend. They're at a plus 5 already. If I were to take that puppy and enroll him in a puppy class that advocates lots of direct play or a puppy play party, plus trips to the park and the beach, lots of play dates, etc., their emotional association is likely to climb into the extreme range. The outcome of such associations include an ability to read and respond to normal social cues, something I call failure to read the room. This occurs because they tend to associate other dogs with play and only play, which makes up, barely 10% of a socially competent dog's social repertoire. They cannot just be with dogs. They have to try to play. They often have an inability to reliably respond to trained behaviours, especially those relating to control around other dogs. So dogs that won't come when called, won't walk politely on leash, or give their owner any amount of attention in the presence of other dogs. And obviously, of course, leash reactivity, which is caused by extreme emotional excitement and arousal, coupled with frustration from being restrained on the leash. It is so common for owners to say that they can't understand why their dog is reactive because they, quote unquote, socialise them. But that their dog gets so excited when they see another dog that they, turn into a dog that they don't recognise, go into a red zone, or become almost manic and scary. And it's because their emotional association with other dogs is so high that they lose their ability to reason. They are often unable to take food while they're in this state, unable to make good choices or take directions from their owners. But on the other hand, we might get a dog that is genetically aloof, like your stereotypical German Shepherd. They are born uninterested in those outside of their social units. They may even have a slight negative association with them. If we were to raise them in the same way as we raised that lab, with lots of direct interactions with others in order to curb the very traits that were bred into them, essentially, we are likely to sensitize them or create a strong negative emotional response. Their associations with other dogs, relate to stress and unwanted social pressure, and thus can go from being mildly defensive to outright antagonistic. And like the obsessive lab, they can go into such a deep emotional headspace that they cannot take food, direction, or, make good choices. Some dogs may present one way only to do a complete 180 as they reach sexual maturity at around 9 months or social maturity after around 2 years. This can look like a dog whose genetics are telling them that other dogs are stressful to be around, but whose early experiences are telling them that they need to get up close and personal with them, so that when they do, they are immediately overwhelmed and conflict is almost inevitable. And none of these situations include the obvious problem with traditional socialization, that is the very high risk of a negative social interaction causing permanent emotional damage due to the highly sensitive nature of puppies. In addition, we're often encouraged to let dogs be dogs and have little to no part in their social experiences. This means that dogs are learning to completely disregard your presence and directions from their earliest point of exposure. Is it any wonder then that when we do start trying to control them, they completely ignore us? Now, we obviously can't just isolate our puppies to prevent these issues, so that will almost certainly cause, other behavioural problems. So what's the solution? Neutralization. Taking a look at this graph again, the aim of neutralization is to condition a lower state of arousal around other dogs and anything else, that we're exposing them to. It takes into account the dog's existing emotional associations, whether that be from their genetics or from their experiences, and simply aims to move them more towards the central neutral zone. For the genetically aloof, that may not result in a positive association, but even if they're in the negative zone, as long as that is only mild, it's easy to work through and control. Neutralization also aims to condition engagement between the dog and their owner in the situations where it's needed. That means that the dog is taught to look at their owner whenever a potential social distraction is present. This is made highly rewarding to the dog, who eventually learns to completely ignore others in favour of engaging with their human. Because the emotional association with others is consistently kept low, the dog is much better able to make good choices, to respond to directions from their owners, and to read the room and respond appropriately to social cues from other dogs. Neutralization involves a few key differences to traditional socialization. Number one is that prioritizes the dog's relationship with their owner over the dog's relationship with anyone else. While exact approaches differ, this often involves making yourself the most interesting thing in all places, but especially those that will require the most control later on, like the dog park. Number two, direct interactions with other dogs are only done with neutral, predictable, older dogs and not with puppies. If your puppy came from a litter, chances are it knows how to play with other puppies. If we continue with this after they come home, they will often only learn the rough and tumble type play that is probably not going to work for them with anyone else. Older dogs will show them a world of other social skills and some more appropriate styles of play. Number three, direct interaction is done with a purpose. From the outset, the owner is encouraged to practice recalls and to reward engagement in the presence of others. Direct interaction is often done on hikes or directed walks or training sessions, so all dogs and puppies involved are kept busy with environmental exploration or engagement games, which takes the pressure off of everyone else. And number four, indirect exposure to others makes up the majority of social experiences. Here, arousal is kept to a minimum, the puppy is taught to look at their owner and to disengage from others. This all culminates into a socially competent older dog that is more unlikely to become reactive. It is what socialization originally was before the industry twisted it into the mess that is promoted today. A neutral dog is considerably easier to train, more enjoyable to take places and to include in life. If you are struggling with a reactive dog, it's a good idea to aim for emotional neutrality as opposed to stereotypical sociability and all that it entails.